ISO FileMaker Magazine, the professional's resource for FileMaker know-how.
Well, hello there, and happy Thanksgiving for those of you celebrating this holiday. My name is Matt Petrowski, bringing you these FileMaker tutorials from my website, FileMakerMagazine.com. In this video, we are taking a look at one of my most favorite topics, and that is it's centered around design. And these are some layout tricks that deal with portals and a few other layout things. I'm so grateful that this is what we can do in FileMaker. Let's go take a look at the file. All right, thanks for joining me here on my desktop. This file is something that you can follow along with me. In fact, I highly suggest it. You will have access to the file over on the FileMaker Magazine website, but if you follow along, you'll have a better, deeper understanding of what you can do in FileMaker and how it's actually done. So we are going to be, here's the overview. We're going to be moving through a series of layouts, and these are the layouts I have. Anchor block, faded portal rows, hidden row actions, row indicators, and then header graphic. So what you see on screen, this plain white box that we have right here, is going to switch to something that looks like this, where when we are selecting on things, we have a button, that is the trash icon right here, and we have, it looks like the selection of the row is indented. I also have this feature right here where this toggle switch makes the sidebar portal even more legible. In fact, let me zoom out here so this is more on screen right here. So you can see what this does is by clicking this toggle, I have this color right here that you can set, whether you can set red, blue, yellow, etc. It's a very simple example, but it just makes it so much easier on the user, where from the standpoint of me looking at this layout, I sort of, okay, which ones are red, which ones are blue? Well, I would have to cycle through each one of them. Well, let's just give the user a convenient feature where they can quickly select this. It groups them. It puts on a little indicator. All of these things, these are the things that we're going to be learning as we move from the anchor block, starting from nothing, going to faded portal rows. You can see we've got the repeating trash icon there. Not a very good look. We go to hidden row actions, where I don't know if you noticed this, but the text, this is something that the wrapping, that's something that we want to address. It is now not wrapping. We get this really nice fade right here, which we're going to take a look at. And these row indicators, where we are now indicating, we've gone and we're bolding this now. And if we have the indicator on, we get the indicator. And then finally we get to a header graphic, which is a bonus in terms of styling and theming, and how it's much easier to do this than the alternative. And we're going to learn all of this in this video. So let's start at our first item, which is our anchor block. Hey there, this is Matt. Thanks for taking the time to watch my free videos on YouTube. This video has been sponsored by what we see on screen right here. Now, if you are looking for hosting, there's a ton of places that you can choose from, but I choose to go with fmcloud.fm, and I'll tell you why. They use the latest technology. Now, I haven't worked with other providers. They may be using the same technology, but I know the owner of fmcloud.fm, Fabrice Nordman. I trust him. I know he knows what he's talking about because his understanding of technology is absolutely solid. Now, these guys are using container-based technology. So every instance of your FileMaker server is completely isolated from another server. How does this benefit you? Well, because of that situation, they're able to provide all of the features, the full features of your FileMaker server. Now, if you go with some of the other providers, you may not have features that you would like to have, such as the ability to run your own plugins. And because each of these containers are isolated from each other, you really have a robust security setup. Now, if we take a look right here, just like any other provider, you can choose from all kinds of different places, anywhere across the globe that you might want to host your FileMaker database system so that your latency is low and all of your clients are connecting really close to your FileMaker server. So if you're looking to set up your own FileMaker server or maybe migrate from another provider, then take a look at the link that I have in the description or on the video or on screen right now at FileMakerMagazine.com/hosting, and we'll redirect you to fmcloud.fm, where you'll be able to take advantage of their great offers. All right, so let's start from the beginning. I'm going to walk you through all of the things that got me from that from this point to the end point and give you all the information in between. In fact, if you like this information, if you enjoy what I'm presenting, how I present it, I highly suggest you go check out FileMakerMagazine.com. It is a website. I've got content going back to 2003 when I started making videos. I think my first videos were in 2003. A lot of FileMaker content is still relevant today, even if it was created 10 years ago. Fundamentally, the platform hasn't changed. Some nuances come into the application as it gets new features, but for the most part, you're going to find a lot of content on the magazine website, but there's free videos like this one on YouTube. So what are we talking about with the anchor block, and what do I mean by an anchor block? Number one, if you have not used in FileMaker, if you are simply taking your fields and you're selecting, let's say, for example, this name field, and you're dragging it and you're putting it onto the screen, onto your layout, and you can see already that this is a very short layout. If you're not taking advantage of anchoring, please do. There are so many FileMaker databases that simply do not take advantage of this right here. And when I talk about anchoring, FileMaker calls it auto sizing, where you've got these little locks. There's 4 of them. Now, what I can do is, if I have something in the dead center of the screen, let's get rid of the label and let's put this in the center. In fact, if you want to get this into the center of the screen, you can take the time and do the math, but the easier thing to do is to simply just create a block like this. Let's make sure everything's on screen so that we can see. I can already see when I currently have something selected right now. If I select nothing by clicking off, these values on the size area within the position tab will tell me that my width of my layout is 256. Well, regardless of what this is, if I want to make this the same width, I can of course drag this out and see that it's the same 256. I also could have, and what I do a lot of the time is I simply just go into that and just type in the value, 256 right there. Well, with that object, I can now select this other object. You notice that what happens is right here, the arrange and align becomes active. Please use those. I have the center right there. That field, at least if it's, in this case, it's a odd number. So if I wanted it to be directly centered, because 256 is even, this would need to be even in order for it to be, you get it. It was 1 pixel off, but FileMaker will work with that regardless. So I can select both of those objects, use the one reference object, and then get rid of it. Now, typically what I have up at the top of my layout, using the text tool, is I'm going to have like a header right there, and FileMaker is going to make that really small. And so typically what I will do is I will have this header. Now, my suggestion to you is don't just stick it right there. Typically I'm going to make this the size of my layout, knowing that I'm oftentimes going to want to use a reference object in order to use the align tools and make that happen. But the whole point being, what does this have to do with the anchor block? The anchor block means that when I select this object, if I turn all of the auto sizing features off and I go into browse mode, you will note that the layout itself now automatically adjusts, no matter how much I drag this out. This is a very key premise where if this is anchored, if the default anchors of left and top are on, then we get this situation right here. So there are times where you're going to want to still use the default anchoring. That is the left and the top. I want this field to be right here. Let's say I'm going to be putting a sidebar in this area, which is what we're going to be doing. But I don't want to automatically center this. If you have a layout where you are not automatically turning off, and basically this is the only one that you need to turn off, the left anchor. If you leave the top anchor on, FileMaker will still, when you go into browse mode, do that. But notice that the bottom area isn't accounted for because there's nothing anchored to the bottom. Now, typically you're going to have an object down on the bottom, maybe a footer text down here. But here is what an anchor block is. If on your layout you are going to have just standard anchoring, meaning the left and the right, that box that I added right there, which we are now going to go over to and give it some colors. So I'm going to give this any arbitrary color right there, just so I can see it as a developer. It's off screen, doesn't matter. What I can do now is I can use that anchoring and simply just turn it on for that block. So regardless of what I have on screen, because of this little object right here, and yes, maybe it's annoying, you don't like things hanging off to the edge, but I mean, you can put that all the way down at the bottom. What it's going to do is it's going to fill the layout out. It's forcing FileMaker to say, I have to go meet the requirements of that little object that's off screen, and it's going to size your layout out, even if you're using the left and the right. So that is the first thing that you recognize about anchoring, even if you're going to use all of the default anchoring that comes when you put all of your fields on, because now I know that the white's going to extend all the way out. But there is a little trick that also comes into play when you have footer parts. So up here we have our part tool right there. So there's two ways to add parts in FileMaker. I can drag a part out, and it will allow me to say whether it's a footer, title footer, or bottom navigation. Bottom navigation is typically what we're using these days, especially if you're going to design mobile, because of this reason right here. If you don't already know, let's put in a 100%. The bottom navigation and the top navigation, these two parts and these two parts only, here and here, will always stay at a fixed percentage of 100% on mobile. Desktop as well, but it affects us more on mobile. The body area, all other parts can be scaled on mobile with a pinch and zoom, and you can lock this, and that's a very key thing to know when you're going to be doing your design. But likewise, you will notice that the part is specific to this anchor block. So if I go in and, well, we need to give the part a different color. Let's go in and give it, let's say a yellow right there temporarily. Notice what it's doing with the body. There are situations where you can, I haven't played with it. Oh, this is fixed. Let's change this to a footer and see what happens. There we go. Did you notice the difference of what happened when I just did that, just that one change? So all of FileMaker's parts, meaning all of these, other than the bottom navigation and the top navigation, will take into account whatever the anchoring is of an object that's within the range of that part. And if you didn't see it on screen, it was really fast. If I move this anchor block, and by the mere fact that this anchor block has these values set on to anchor, what's going to resize out is the body part. If I simply move that object down into the range of the footer part, which is not a bottom navigation, notice what happens. You can take advantage of this in some situations with some, it's more obscure and it's an edge case, but I have used this in order to say, put things on a footer where in a list view, if I was using a list view, the body was already really thin and all of my rows would be repeated. But then let's say, for example, down in this bottom area, you're going to use a web viewer or something to that effect. And so what you're able to do is, if your web viewer, even if it was super small, even if it was that tiny, we'll just say, okay, if I anchored all of those out, now in this case, I'm anchoring the web viewer itself, so I wouldn't necessarily need that. I just cut that, and this bottom part sizes out for me. So that's the first thing that we want to recognize about using anchoring. Number one, use anchoring. Number two, know that the anchoring affects the part other than top navigation and bottom navigation. All right, moving on, we are going to the next stage. That is faded portal rows. Now, what did I do in this scenario? Well, I've got my layout, and notice that I've got my anchor block. It's right down there. We just learned about that. I have put a portal on the layout. Now, FileMaker did not, I'm an old school FileMaker developer, and one of the newer features in FileMaker was the ability to use it used to be historically portals were only for related data from other tables. Well, FileMaker at some point, I forget which version it was, added the ability to do what is called a master detail. So this portal shows all of whatever records are in the current found set. That means that you can control what's in this portal based on your find or whatever query you make of your database. and it's the current table. Now, regardless of whether this is a portal that's showing related data or it's showing the records of the current found set, we are able to do things in portals in order to make them much nicer rather than just leaving them as they are. The first thing that I'd like to point out is these values right here. FileMaker, when it implemented, it went from, I believe, I forget which version it was again. It went from this internal method of rendering a layout to using CSS at some point in time. Now, behind the scenes, this CSS, all of these little attributes that define how something looks are controlled typically in this area right here. This is where you're going to change your color, your line, graphics, etc. But there are some settings that do impact the CSS. And if we select, say, for example, this portal, and we look at the style of this portal, notice that we've got the style. I've got it named active row transparent. But if we go to this option of row and we look at our options of we've got primary, alternate, active, hover, pressed, etc. What I want you to make note of is that there are attributes that are not in this area that do apply to the styling. And when it comes to a portal, double-clicking the portal, these two are part of those settings. So we can always see that by looking at the little dot that is right here. If it goes red, that means there's a change. So you can see that in this case, the portal setup settings, if I turn this off and click OK, notice that that arrow just went red. And we've got the little star indicating that it has been changed. So this applies, I forget, there's just a handful of objects that do this. But it is something that you need to be aware of, that there are times where you do want to use the active row state, and there are times that you don't. In this video, I am showing you that if I have a portal and it has multiple objects within that portal, then typically what I want to use is I want to use the active state of the portal row in order to show a highlight color. The alternative is to whatever objects are in that row to actually right-click on them and use conditional formatting. Now, with conditional formatting, it is the highest level, or it is the override of everything that falls underneath it. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at some other options that you have, my preferred method of actually showing things within a portal. Now, the next thing that we're going to see right now, we're talking about, it's up here in the corner, faded portal rows, which we're going to get to, but this is my preferred method of any portal row. Typically, you are not having a user edit or modify data in a portal row. If you are, you're doing it through like a button that shows a popover and then presents the field itself. Or many times I've had a field that is sometimes hidden but non-enterable, and I will have a little pencil icon and you click on that and it goes into the field. The field is behind the object that we see right here. The object that we have is a single segment button bar. That is absolutely my preferred method. Now you can see that we've got a trash can right here. This trash can, if I move this up, and by the way, I didn't want to gloss over the fact, if you do use or turn on these options on the portal settings, typically you're going to be creating another style, because in this situation, I originally was using a style that came with the theme, with the Apex Blue. You can see that I've named this modified version, Apex Blue Modified. But originally, this portal started out as transparent. If I select transparent and I want to know whether or not that setting is set, you can see that the transparent does not respect or does not use the active row state. So with this selected, even if I go over here and selected the portal row and select, oh, okay, I want the active row to actually be a color right here. That red won't even apply. So even if I click and save the changes right there to the style, it doesn't matter because, well, FileMaker turned it on when I made that selection. I can come in and uncheck that. So even though that is now unchecked, you can see that I have set the color Fortunately, FileMaker is not showing the color because of that checkbox, but both settings have to be set in order for the color or the style to actually be applied. So that's just something that you need to know about some of these objects. But we are taking a look at what makes this faded. Well, as I move this object out, I have my portal row. It is a calculation. We're going to see how fabulous using a calculation is when we get to indicators, all kinds of stuff. This is something that I like to do. I like to take advantage of the fact that because we have gradients, I might as well make it such that my contents shown in my portal row, they just look nice. And that is simply just a matter of using a gradient right there. Now you can see that by using the gradient, I can adjust or control how quickly that fade actually happens. There's two ways that you can do it. You can do it based on the percentage of your colors here, and you can also do it based on your width of your button right there. Now, typically you want your button to be of an ideal clickable area. I'm not going to make this really small. If I'm designing this for hybrid or for mobile, it's going to be a minimum of 40 by 40, preferably 48 by 48, I believe is what the iOS guidelines suggest. But you're going to have to do some tweaking. In this scenario, you can see that I need to get the fade itself so that the icon is actually centered within the area so that the fade applies right here. When we double click this, we also have our button bar setup where we can take advantage of the positioning of the icon. You can see that clearly I have positioned the icon, since I'm not using any text on this button bar segment, that it's just going to show over there on that edge. And then, of course, I'm just going to save that as a style. And what we get is the nice effect of anything that flows underneath it that's actually going to blend or give me a really nice look. So when it comes to flowing underneath, when we go into browse mode, you can see that on this record, I have put in, and this is something that FileMaker does by default, when you have FileMaker's fields, when they are not active, will wrap or hide the contents of their text. So when I select in here, we can see that the field itself extends out. In the regards to using anything that displays, such as we're going to have now in FileMaker 20.2. whatever and higher, we have layout objects, which if I am only displaying anything in a portal row and it's not a clickable object, then I can use a layout object. So in FileMaker 20 and higher, we've got this new option, or 20.2. We've got this new option of layout calculation. So don't forget those. I would be able to put a layout calculation. I'll just call this just literal text of button. So if this portal row was not going to be clickable, then I would be able to use this right here. And you may be asking yourself, okay, Matt, when would you ever not have a portal row be clickable? Well, in this particular instance of how this is being used, this doesn't need to be a button, because this master detail portal, which shows records from the current found set, if it simply just needs to display text, because clicking on the row itself takes you to the actual record, then there is no need for a button. Aside from that, one of our alternatives is, there's just so many ways to do things in FileMaker. In FileMaker, if I look at script triggers for a portal, I also have this one right here on object enter. So if I didn't want to have a button in there, a button or a button bar is the easiest, then I can also use a trigger such that when the user enters any given row, I can fire my script that way as well. So there's many ways to do things in FileMaker, but that faded row is a really nice way to do things. But having that faded row in this particular instance, and we'll push that down and I'll push that over. All I'm using there is shortcut keys that I have assigned in order to take advantage of my alignment options right here. So all I did is I went into the Macintosh operating system, go into the arrange. You've got your align and distribute. You can see that I have assigned shortcut keys, and I did this through the keyboard setting in the preferences of the Macintosh operating system that I'm using here. If you're on Windows, you'll have to find something that allows you to do that. FileMaker does not have modifiable menus. I wish they did. A lot of applications do in their preferences, they list all of their menu options and let you assign shortcut keys. That would be cool, but FileMaker doesn't have it, but the OS allows us to do that. So that's all I did to position that. Now, in order to take advantage of the fact that this is going to work this way, and notice that what I have here, that difference in color, what we're going to see on the next thing is, because a portal is a container, we are just going to drag this out so that the text doesn't wrap, and it's going to fall underneath our faded icon. Now, what we're going to do is this. We can see we've got some rows that look like they're, they don't have any data, but there's no real indication for us other than the fact that we've got this icon that's repeated multiple times, which I really hate. I hate it when you see something unless you know that the user is going to need to delete on every row. I like the whole concept that is present in all of computing, which is in order for it to be affected, it must be selected. And this applies to cut, copy, and paste. You must select the text in order to cut and copy it, so it must be selected in order to be affected. So in this scenario, I want to make sure that the user is selected on what they want to affect before I show the button, and that's what we're going to be getting to here in the next segment. But what we're going to have to do when we have things selected, in this particular case, I believe my portal is still, the reason it's not showing correctly is because I had made a change to that portal. I changed it from the style that I had set. So if we go look at the style that I did set, the active row transparent, setting this back will then use the styling that we have where the active row state now actually applies, and we'll see that it will blend where I've matched the color. So this is the key that we need when we're going to have objects such as buttons on our portals that need to match. So we are going to be taking a look at the conditional formatting. That is the little icon that we have right there with the blue, half of a blue triangle and half of a red triangle. When we right click on this and we click on our conditional formatting, this is the first thing that we are going to be able to use in order to control that visibility. So a long time ago, FileMaker has always had a get record number function, but it did not have an active record number function. And when we are able to look at the active record number in relation to the record number, we are able to now say we want to conditionally do something based on whatever the current record is. So this right here is the key to making, at least when it comes to this master detail type of portal, where the portal is the current record set of the current found set, or the current record set of the found set, the current found set of this particular table. You can see that I had to make the color match the same color as the active row state or the active row style setting for the portal. Now, yes, again, there's two ways that I could have done this. I could have applied a conditional formatting to the button object itself, but again, one of the things that I prefer to do is it's much easier to change one thing that is in the background where everything else in front of it is all transparent and you can always see through it, because that's one change as opposed to however many changes I would have to make if I had multiple objects. What I mean by that is if I had multiple objects in here, I'd much rather be able to control that one active state, because then I don't have to do conditional formatting on this and conditional formatting on this and conditional formatting on this. Remember, in FileMaker, everything adds on top of itself. The more calculations you have, whether it's conditional formatting, hide calculations, what have you, that's more work that you're giving to FileMaker. It's sort of like being overloaded yourself. You're just giving all these tasks, and things get slower and slower and slower. So part of your goal is to, how can I take advantage of a given feature and have something that's super lightweight and do that just once and have it, affect throughout the whole of my solution, which is what we're going to see at the end of this video when we get to header graphics, which is really cool. So drag this out. Container objects are Popovers, portals, sliders, and tab panels are all the containers, and that means that you can have your contained objects extend outside of the boundaries, use your fade, and then align everything. Use your conditional formatting in order to match whatever your style is on your row, and then just move on to the next area. All right, let's go to the next area, which is hidden row actions. Now, this is super easy. At this stage, what we've done is I have advanced this, and the first thing that I was showing you of being able to put the fade on the trash can icon, or this icon, which I only want to show when the record is active, which is super simple. You're going to love this. You just learned it. You just need to flip the logic. But before I do that, let's take a look at what I have here. I've got the trash can icon, and it's faded if it's going to be showing. We're going to look at this hide calculation on the trash can icon. But first, let's see what I did underneath it. Well, what I have is a text block. So because each row now is only going to be showing the icon when the icon is being presented, I need to simply fade this. Now, my suggestion is, whenever you're designing your layouts, you want things to be well balanced. And by well balanced, what I mean is the distance from this edge to the start of my text versus the distance from the top edge to the top of my text, and the distance from the bottom edge to the bottom of my text. All of this needs to be balanced. That's what makes your FileMaker solution, or any solution well designed, feel good. This typically starts at the point where you create your grid. You've got all of your settings. I've got a video on the FileMaker Magazine website, or even here on YouTube, about grids and using them. But do the same with your fade. So in other words, if I have an 8-point distance, which I believe that's what it is in this particular database, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do about an 8-point distance before I start my fade so that things feel balanced on both sides. I have 8 points over here and I have 8 points over here. And that's what makes it feel good and balanced. So what is it, as I undo everything here and put things back in place, what is it that allows you to control the visibility of whether a button shows or not, or only shows on the active row? Well, when we look at the hide settings for this calculation, which the hide is in the fourth area right here, we'll collapse that so that we can see right here. Look at what we have. It is nothing less than changing the equal sign in order to find the current active record to the not equal sign. So in other words, you are going to hide yourself unless you are the active record, and that's the only time that you're going to show yourself. So I love this about FileMaker. You simply oftentimes don't think about how simple things can be, that if you have one particular instance, meaning I want this to happen on every row, or when a given row is the same thing, if you flip the logic on itself, you get the result that you want, meaning this trash icon is only going to show when I have a given row selected. Now, this is what's really cool about this is called this is part of the premise of UI UX design called progressive disclosure, meaning you disclose something progressively as the user needs to access it. So I want to have this be super simple. It just needs to be the name of what you show. But progressively, I want to show the user more things, such as when you make a selection, I'm going to give you, in this case, an option to delete, which preferably I never do. Deleting should be much more difficult than just a simple click in the UI, unless that is an action that the user is taking frequently. If you have a lot of deletes, sure, put this here. But in most situations, I won't. The only reason I put a trash can here was because it is easy to simply just assign a single step and actually have it do something. But typically, this is going to be, I will have like 3 dots that will open up a popover, and then at the bottom of the popover, or you have to go to an actual record in order to, in other words, it has to be a little more overt for it to be a delete action. But you'll notice one other thing that we have in this scenario, and this is something that I like to do, which is this object right here, which is my shadow box. In this case, I'm using the shadow box for the purpose of when it is selected, it just gives you a little bit of depth. It makes whatever is selected, go recessed because it has that actual shadow. Well, there's multiple ways that you can take advantage of this in FileMaker. One of them that I really like is when I have a portal that does allow the addition of records. Now, in this particular database, this portal is the master detail portal. It is not a portal that is going to a related table and allowing for records to be created. If I want at the very bottom, if I want to use a shadow in order to indicate the end of the list of all of the current rows or available rows in that portal, I will take advantage of that. And that is usually using this exact same setup. All of your portal row objects have to be within the portal row, the one row that's going to show. But if FileMaker is set to allow creation of related records, and if you don't know where that is, let's take a quick look. I've gone into the relationship graph. I've created a quick relationship. It is right here on the edit relationship. It is this option, allow creation of records in this table. So if this is turned on for a related portal, which in this case, we're just going to get out of this, discard all of our settings, then you're going to have an object in the portal row right here, but you're going to have a hide setting, which will be a little bit different than what this one is set for, which currently this one is just set to the same thing. It is set to only show when you are the current active record by inversing the logic. What we would have if I was using this on the last row, I would actually say is empty, and then I would go to whatever the related table is and look at the ID field, and I would say you are going to hide if you are not empty, meaning that that shadow is not going to show on any active row. But the very last row, FileMaker does still show, and that very last row is the row that's waiting for the creation of a record, which means it does not currently have an ID. So this right here will show the shadow on the very bottom of the actual portal when you have a portal that is set. So it looks pretty cool. You can get the shadow down at the very bottom right here and really make it look like, okay, this is my list of records and it ends here. And what's nice is when you scroll this portal and you get down to the very bottom, one of the things that you can do is you can see that this portal doesn't actually go all the way to the bottom. So you can leave a little bit of space. Your portal doesn't have to go to the very bottom of your layout. What happens is that shadow will come up into frame when you've scrolled down to the very last row. Now, of course, you have to apply a conditional formatting or the hide setting on all of your other objects. I don't want this to show. I don't want my button to show. I have to do the same logic on those rows, but it's one of the ways that you can get a really cool effect in terms of what goes on. And that is the hiding row. You are able to hide a sequence of buttons. So typically what I'm going to do is anytime I will show up to 3 on a portal row if I've got the width. Otherwise, if not, then I'm going to one button, and that is with the new I forget what you call it, metaphor or whatever, the 3 dots for you have more options. And when you click on the 3 dots, that of course is going to open up a popover for me and then show you multiple options of what you can do. So let's move on to the next section of row indicators. All right, we're moving on to row indicators, but just before we do that, notice that there's one thing that I could do here that I haven't done. This selection looks fine. I've got my nice fade right here, but I make a selection. What could I do in this instance in order to clean things up using what I just showed you how to do? Well, I could give this a fade such that the gradient actually makes this still blend even when it's got the selection or the color change because of the selection. So that's another thing that I could do to further make this just look that much better. But row indicators. All right. If you are familiar with FileMaker, then you are probably familiar with the fact that you have access to conditional formatting. The most common thing to do is to basically use conditional formatting such that on my segment here, which I've dragged out so that it's going to flow underneath my fade, if I right click and I put on my conditional formatting, the most typical thing that we're going to do is we're going to use that setting. Now, what is that setting? Well, the setting was if get active record number is equal to get record number right there. This is something that I would be able to use on my conditional formatting, and I would be able to just say, make it bold. In my opinion, there is a much better way. In fact, I prefer not to use conditional formatting because conditional formatting acts as an override. I prefer to use all of the calculation logic that I have in the calculation field, or the field for the button itself, rather than using it here. You can see that I have it turned off. I left this here in order to showcase. At this point, I've now used this on a hide calculation. I've now used this, I've used the inverse, but I'm starting to use this a lot. This is one of the fundamentals in all of software. It is make dry code. Dry stands for do not repeat yourself, DRY. So notice that when I jumped into this originally, what I had is that right there. This is what you start to do when you note that you are using the same calculation sequence over and over and over again. You many times want to make this a custom function. So if we just go hop up to really quickly our manage, look at our custom functions, look at active record, there it is. It is nothing different than what we already did, but it makes it much easier for me to now use this in multiple places because I can actually go make a lot of changes. I can make the change right here where this is the conditional formatting. I can change this to active record. I can go look at the hide conditional or the hide object. With that selected, there it is right there. So how can I do the same thing that I've got right here? Well, in order to flip the logic on this, all I would have to do is say not active record right there. So these are now directly equivalent. And what I'm getting is I'm getting an easier thing to track and manage. Plus, I can go modify this custom function if I needed to in order to tweak it slightly, and it flows into everywhere that it's actually being used. Whereas in this one scenario, where I have this sequence of active record number and record number multiple times, I have to go and hit each one of those as a touch point in terms of my code. So we'll go ahead and leave that because I'm going to leave that for you to do to change in the file if you want to. It's really good to do that. But what we're doing now is we are using our row indicators. And this is where we are taking advantage of the fact that in our calculation logic, we have access to everything that we could ever want in order to style things. So as you can see right here, we have a, looks pretty complex, but it's not. If you've not used let functions before, the let function, in my opinion, is the first function you should ever learn in FileMaker. It is your playground. It is how you create and construct any type of logical structure that you need in your code. Yeah, there's a lot of functions in FileMaker, but if you don't know the let function, you are shortchanging yourself by 1,000% in terms of not learning what you can do, because it allows you to do things like this. Set up all of your variables that are really easy to make readable code. And in this scenario, we're able to use indicators in order to show and change this row to whatever we want to do. In this case, you can see that I'm actually using a, it's not the bullet character. I believe this is the black circle. Here's how you can actually go up and get access to a lot of things. In the Macintosh, there's this little guy right here, which is part of the show emoji and symbols. And you can see right here that I had gone into the bullets and stars area. I saw that this was right here. You can see that it is the black circle. There is the Unicode value right there, which you don't need to know. for FileMaker development, but it's good to learn about Unicode character, etc. You can, of course, use emoji, but emoji are going to look different on the Macintosh as opposed to Windows. So many times it's good to pick something that is on both platforms and then actually apply the styling that you can use, which in this case you can see right there is clearly text color. So knowing that you can do that, let's take a look at this function and see what happens as it works. I'm going to have to get some wrapping in there in order to get that all on screen so that we can see what's going on and discuss this. All right, again, if you have not used let functions, this is a good example to work with in terms of what is happening here. With the let function, typically what we want to do is we do not want to, once we've made a reference to one thing, whether it's a field, a global variable, a local variable, whatever the reference is, if we can contain that in what's called scope, then it makes it much easier because we only have to make a change in one place. In other words, when I declare this variable of name, anywhere throughout the rest of the function that name is used, it is using whatever value is supplied here. So this is only used once. Notice that I don't have this, here and then down here. I haven't sprinkled it all over my code. I've put it once in my code, and then I'm able to reference that variable no matter where it is. So I'm going to back out of this so that we can get back in and, not see all of my example there. So this is a cascade. What happens is as I set things up, there is a procedure that you need to follow. I've set what is the name the value that I need. And typically up at the top, all of your references are going to come first. I have my color, which is the value coming from my color field. Then notice I have a normal value. And when we look at the bolded value, when we are going to use the style add to add the bolding, that is going to be applied to the normal. So the normal cascades down into what we're going to do. Same thing with the indicator. The indicator is going to get its size. Its size is controlled in one place in all of this code. And then that indicator is going to flow down into anything else. Now there's another lesson that we have here, and it follows that active record. When I'm designing my database, is there anything on screen that you can see that it would be much easier for me to have as a custom function rather than repeating it over and over and over again? If you didn't guess, it is each one of these values right here. So if I'm going to be using red, blue, and yellow, these colors that are possible options in my menu throughout all of my solution, then preferably I do not want to have to type or remember this number over and over and over again. So let's just take the blue right here where I am going to copy this now. I am going to go into my custom functions, manage custom functions. I'm going to click new. I am typically going to use a prefix that allows me to group all of these together. So I'm not going to just put in blue versus red versus yellow, because that's going to spread them all over throughout my list of custom functions. I'm going to type color blue, and I'm going to put that right there. Now, if you don't already know, RGB actually results in there's a value. If we open up our data viewer, and we go in and we create a new watch variable, and I type in color blue, notice that I'm getting just a straight up value. This is the value that I want to use rather than that RGB, because now anywhere that I am going to be using that value, such as in my display, all I have to do is my blue color now becomes color blue. And there we go. So you're going to do the same thing for your default color. You're going to do the thing for your red, your yellow, etc. Now this cascades. If in your solution, once you've used this once, if you're always referencing color blue as a custom function and you've decided to change your color scheme, how easy is it to change? You're only doing it in one place. You're doing dry coding. And it cascades to everywhere where you have referenced the color blue of that RGB. So make sure and take advantage of what you can. For the rest of this, you can see that I have a display variable. That is just simply saying, hey, if you're blue, then you're going to result in blue. If you're red, you're going to be red. If you're going to be yellow, and so forth. Now remember, even this bit of code right here, if I'm using this now here on this layout, as soon as I create another layout, is that an opportunity for me to make this dry code? In other words, could I take this into a custom function because it's being used on multiple layouts and then just reference that custom function to return the proper color? Yes, that is absolutely something you can do. To what extent that you use the custom functions for this purpose, I'm going to leave up to you, but anytime that I know that there is something that I'm going to use in multiple places, especially across multiple layouts, many times, even though it references logic that is context specific, meaning it's tied to the layout, that's tied to the table, that's tied to the fields that I use, I will many times create a custom function. Now, the last thing that we have here is we have just a simple concatenation of two different ifs right here. We are combining the fact that if we have something turned on, in this case we're using a global variable, then we are going to display our display, which is our indicator, whether it's blue, red, yellow, etc., with a character value, and we're going to concatenate this. Now I love this about the if function. The if function, as it starts out, when you type it out, it has if test, then I'm going to give you a result. But I optionally have a default result, meaning, in other words, if this is true, I get this result. If it's false, then you can optionally return this, and if you do not use that, it is nothing. So in other words, the way that this reads is, if this is turned on, you are going to return this. Otherwise, you're going to return nothing. And nothing combined with something is going to be the result that I want. In other words, I only want this to show if this is a positive value right here. And that's exactly what's happening in my UI when I go on to be in browse mode and I am toggling this, which we show our variables. We look at current. We can see that color show right there is going to be relative. I click this. We can see that it goes from 1 to 0. It is just a simple flipping. Now my script is doing something where it is sorting the records because this portal is based on the current found set. I am sorting based on the color value first, and then based on the name. And you can look at that in the debugger. In fact, we can take a look at the script really quickly. It is nothing more than right here. We are setting the variable itself to the opposite of itself. So in other words, if you're a 1, flip to a 0. If you're a 0, flip to a 1. Then refresh the toggle itself. Refresh the portal because the portal has a button bar segment that is calculating its result, bolding if it's active record, indicator if indicator should be shown, colored according to the color of the data for a nice view for the user, and then just do some sorting here, either sort or unsort the records. I will leave it up to you to determine and manage whether the user previously had the data set in a sorted order. In other words, this is things that you need to account for when you're developing. If I, as a user, came in and I said, you know what, I want to sort this. I activated that with Command S, and I just want to see everything in descending order of the name right here. So currently, it is my database, or FileMaker knows that my database is sorted. So this is the user state, and state is something you always have to think about in your FileMaker solutions, or any software for that matter. My current state is that I am looking at all 7 records. I'm on the 4th record. The sorted state is sorted, and it's sorted based on a value that the user has specified. Now, many times you will have programmatically controlled the sort, but as soon as I do this and then click this, the byproduct is I triggered an unsort records. I did not capture or save the fact that the user had the database in a sorted state according to a setting that they like. And this is something that you have to manage as a developer if you want to put the user back into a previous state, but it's something that you absolutely need to be aware of if you're going to become an advanced FileMaker developer, because maintaining state in programming is a very cool thing to do because your users like it because they expect to be put back into the state that they were in. So, long story short, we are at or towards the end of the video now. I hope you've learned a lot here in this video. This is one of my free videos on YouTube giving you just all kinds of useful information about designing and working in FileMaker. Again, if you're interested, go over to the magazine website and learn more about FileMaker. You can literally create software. It is absolutely cool. I love it. But we are going to take a look at one final thing here, and that is when you start to design things that are common and repeated across your solution. This is the last of them, the header graphic. You want to make things, one, be as lightweight as possible, and two, be something that you can maintain such that you change it once and it just flows throughout your whole solution. So in this last little segment, taking a look, and there's not going to be any changes here between row indicators and header graphic, but there's a big difference in terms of impact of what you have to do to maintain a solution. So let's cover a header graphic versus what you may be doing in your header and see what we can do in order to make things even that much better in our solutions. All right, we are taking a look at the header graphic or the header image. Now, notice when I switch between these two, row indicators and header graphic, there are no changes. Nothing is changing on screen, but there is absolutely a very significant difference. And it comes in the form of this. When we're on row indicators, if I click here, you can see that I have an object. Now, one of the things that you do in FileMaker, and it's been a request, but I don't know that they would actually be able to implement it unless they do a lot of engineering requirements, would be reusable layout parts. In other words, having this top navigation be something that I could do on a separate layout where that layout only has the top navigation, and then I'm able to reference that top navigation in other layouts. That is the ideal scenario, because then any changes that I make to this one area in its dedicated layout then flows to all other layouts that reference it. But currently, we have to repeat a lot of things across a lot of layouts, and your solution, guaranteed, as it grows, will be a hassle of having to deal with all of these objects. Now, I only have one object right now, and it is basically using a transparency in order to, it's a percentage of black. I think it's 20% with a little bit heavier right there in order to create the shadow with a line on it. If I was to zoom in, I believe, there we go. We can zoom in even more, and you can see the line right there. I have to manage this. If I decide to change the color scheme of my layout, I now, in some cases, have to go and do something to every layout. Now, this isn't that big of a deal as it stands right now, because all I have to do really for this object is make sure that I have a dedicated style. In this case, I've got a header overlay. There's two things that I would have to do. So let's look at this from the standpoint of I've got the top navigation, and the top navigation has a style. Then, however many objects I have in this header, which is presumably repeated across many different layouts, I have to change the style for each one of those. From the standpoint that I am going to have something that is going to be different on each and every layout, let's say it is this text plus a number of buttons, whatever I'm going to show, if it's possible for me to only make one change instead of multiple changes, which in this case I have to make a change on the style here, I have to make a change on the style here, that's what I'm going to prefer to do. So I've covered this, and this is a tip that I've shown many years ago and a long time. But once I have designed a look that I like, in other words, I like the way that this looks right here, is there a way for me to make this one so that it's lightweight, too easy to maintain? Absolutely there is, and it works like this. I can take a screenshot of this right now. Now, there is the key thing that you need to know. In the way that we're designing, when I select this top navigation and I look at the position value, I can see that it's 88 points. Well, that is not necessarily the resolution. The resolution that I'm looking at, I'm designing on a 4K screen right now. It's actually 2x of this, and we need to be aware that iPhones or mobile devices will actually go even up to 3x. So the ideal scenario is to have this have your actual graphic be 3 times the size of this 88 points. So I want 3 times 88, but if I'm willing to settle with the fact that I can screenshot this, which I'm going to do right now. So I've designed it. I'm going to screenshot this. You can see that my cursor changed. This is just part of the default Macintosh operating system. I'm going to grab a slice of this that was just put onto my clipboard. If I go over to the preview application in the Macintosh, and actually just go up to the new menu. Oh, that's FileMaker. Let's see if preview closed. Preview is not behaving for me right now. Preview, cancel, stay in preview, go to new from clipboard right there. There we go. That's what I wanted. So what this has done is I increase the, I'm clicking just the Command plus in order to zoom this up. Notice that what I get is a screenshot of the graphic that I want. Now, when I grab this, notice that things are getting blurry here as I size this up. Well, it's not blurry anymore, but you need to be able to see everything on screen in order to grab what you need to grab. But in essence, what we're able to do is, even just using the preview application right here, as simple as it is, note that when I was dragging that, there was a little indicator down here at the bottom that it was telling me you have 5 pixels wide by 176. So 88 times 2 is going to be that 176. I can make this as thin as 1 pixel if I want. That's all that I need. But from the standpoint of something that's usable, I'll usually use 3 pixels wide. I can crop this, which in this preview application is Command K, which crops it. I can now save this PNG. I can just do Command S, or I can go to export right now and export it, which I'll just go ahead and do. I had this called layout header 2 right here. I don't need alpha in this case, but leaving it on doesn't hurt. You can see that it's only 4 kilobytes right there. I'll go ahead and save that, replace it in this particular case. There's even further optimizations. You can get this down if you were to run it through a PNG optimizer to get it even smaller. But the whole point being, with this very small, I'll go ahead and delete that for right now. With this very, very small graphic, I am now able to get the exact same look, but with less maintenance requirements. So going to the header graphic, you can see that when I select the top navigation and I go over to the appearance area, you can see that the graphic that I've chosen to use, rather than a solid color, is now an image gradient. And you can see what I did. We'll go ahead and re-choose this to show you what the settings are. I simply click choose. It comes up with the prompt. I choose the header right there. I load that in. All I have to do is it's automatically going to hit the width. And what I'm going to do is I'm simply just going to drag the top and the bottom so that it shows the full slice. So even though it's a 2x, it's going to shove down into the 88 points or the 88 pixels that I have. Typically, you're going to go over to a graphics program and create a 3x version of this if you're going to be displaying, using this for mobile as well. But for most of your desktop, Windows, and Macintosh, this is going to be just fine, even on a 4K display, because it's typically only at 2x. But again, if you do want to do mobile, make sure you use a graphics program. I prefer Sketch on the Macintosh, and I will make a 3x version. Not by copying and pasting this, but actually recreating this particular gradient right here. And by doing that, what I have now is if I was to save this, and I'll go, in this case, I'll just revert the changes to the style because I already have it. I now, if I wanted to change the color of this, because this is only those, however many bytes they are, and because FileMaker repeats it across the way, I know that it's optimized, it's easy to maintain. I only have to make the change once, and every other part that I use is going to use that same setting and cascade for all of the other layouts that use the same style. Now, sometimes you will have different parts in different variations, and that's because of whether you're using list view and form view, whether it's scrollable. Your use of parts in FileMaker absolutely does change depending on the way that you're choosing to use that layout. That is a topic that I've covered in other videos, and if you'd like to learn about that, then you're more than welcome to head over to FileMakerMagazine.com, and I've got tons of videos like this in order to really maximize what you know in terms of building software in FileMaker. I hope this video has helped you out. I hope you have a good holiday season. I look forward to providing you with more videos in the future, and much luck with your database development. And until next time, happy FileMaking.
We hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial, and we'd like to say thank you for your subscription and your support. If you're not already a subscriber, head on over to www.filemakermagazine.com/subscribe for more information about the benefits of joining.